Silicon Valley Bank clients can fully access funds after FDIC creates new bridge bank. And of course, Bitcoin is pumping and melting faces. And the complete crypto market cap is actually, it broke above $1 trillion again. Bitcoin is also currently trading at approximately $24,000, which is absolutely outstanding and just kind of shows how powerful Bitcoin is, because I believe that all U.S. stocks or U.S. bank stocks were halted due to volatility, or some of them. But anyways, let's kind of talk about what happened over the weekend. So Silicon Valley Bank collapsed last week following a $42 billion bank run. And the bank did a count number of crypto entities as clients, including CoinDesk. Around 85% of depositors held money in accounts that were not FDIC insured, but FDIC came in and said, don't worry, we will save you. And basically, without FDIC insurance, it means that without federal action or purchase of the bank, those funds could be irretrievable. But FDIC came in and is saving everything. This is a big story. Who wants to take over next and talk about it?
I love the way you describe this, Wendy. FDIC came in and said, don't worry, we got you. But it was a really kind of tumultuous weekend. I remember on Friday talking to a lot of people in the industry because I was stressed out, right? I am one of the people who get paid in USDC. So I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And a lot of people were like, well, we don't know what to do. There's no literature on like what can happen. This is something that, people are not prepared for. And what that made me think about was, when that person said there's no literature on this, I was like, well, if we think about the Bitcoin white paper, it was written out of something exactly like this, right? And so to see Bitcoin pumping today on Monday isn't surprising to me. I think we see all of these banks failing. A lot of people came out over the weekend and said, this is not a crypto story. This is a larger economic story. And to see one bank after the other fail, granted, two of them were very crypto friendly, it doesn't surprise me to see Bitcoin pumping. Zach?
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic bank run, right? We had Silicon Valley Bank, which we talked about previously, right? Their major investors advised some of their portfolio companies to maybe seriously consider moving funds out because things were looking dicey, right? They were having to sell off assets to meet this influx of withdrawals. And in doing so, just given how quickly sort of the macroeconomic footing has changed in the US, they were selling things due to the interest rates where they were selling things that were far less than what they had thought. And before you know it, they were no longer able to continue. It was certainly an open question as to whether or not the FDIC would come in and backstop people above that $250,000 threshold, of which something like 90% of depositors at Silicon Valley Bank surpassed, right? This is a bank that serves startups, tech companies. Wendy, you mentioned it, CoinDesk even, right? So the fact that FDIC came in and said, hey, above this $250,000 threshold, we're going to make sure that these depositors are whole, while wiping out investors in the bank itself, in doing so, was something that was very much up in the air. And, Jen, you alluded to this, and we're going to talk about this in depth on the next story, but, USDC, by way of its relationship with Circle, which was holding reserve assets with Silicon Valley Bank, was also implicated, and that got really dicey over the weekend as well. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, this is pretty crazy. I mean, this potentially could impact a ton of banks in the US. We've seen President Joe Biden come out and make a statement. We've seen significant action being taken to give banks more funds as they really reckon with what has been wrought by the interest rate hikes put onto the market by Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. So really, really remarkable time. And that B word, bank run, is really on the lips of everyone. And people are wondering if there are subsequent banks that may succumb to what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. And then following that, even Signature Bank, which was another crypto-friendly bank. We can get to that in a bit as well. Wendy, I think I saw your hand up, but definitely want to get Will's take on this one.
Really quick, I don't want to call it a crypto issue because it's not a crypto issue. The way the mainstream media is going to flip this is they're going to blame crypto because they want to create more FUD in the market because they want to have really predatory regulations roll out. So I don't think we should refer it to a crypto failure. It has nothing to do with the crypto failure. People that bank should have access to their money. That is a basic human right, in my opinion. Will?
Yeah, it's a really weird topic to talk about, I think, for us specifically, because we're so focused on the crypto ecosystem, and this is really moving into TradFi land, right? So it's a little bit out of our expertise, but that being said, it's still a finance conversation. And two of these three banks that are now in receivership with FDIC or have voluntarily chosen to liquidate themselves did serve crypto people first and foremost. Signature and Silvergate were known for serving large crypto customers, and now they are basically being dissolved. So we got to talk about it no matter what. The thing here that I'm seeing is that it's a mismatch between assets and liabilities spurred on by the sudden increase in interest rates by the Federal Reserve. A lot of these banks purchased bonds that had very long expirations far in the future using the deposits. And then those deposits were being pulled out very quickly and the banks were not able to offset those assets and liabilities. This gets really confusing very quickly. So I don't want to stay in that lane too much, which is definitely not my expertise. That being said, I think to your point, Wendy, this is just going to be painted as a crypto problem, right? And it's weird to see Bitcoin pumping right now. Like Jen, I actually take on the other side of your point. I think it's really weird to see Bitcoin pumping right now. And people are seeing that, looking at like other crypto tokens are pumping as well with it. I think you can look at the altcoins and be like, oh, you're pumping because Bitcoin's pumping. But why is Bitcoin really pumping in this situation? I think the people on Twitter are saying, well, it's because Bitcoin is uncensorable money. It's an alternative to banking. And I don't know if I really like that explanation as much. I don't think people are going out necessarily purchasing it just because they're sort of getting that for the first time on Monday in the middle of this bank run. I think there's other things at force, including people just purchasing Bitcoin. And as we will talk about in a little bit, Binance buying a lot of Bitcoin this morning. But definitely something that kept a lot of us up this weekend. And I think we're going to see some more stuff this week. Zach, up to you.
Yeah, I will say, I think the crypto angle isn't to be undersold, right? You look at, I think the most instructive thing that's emerged over the last, 24 hours is the example of like First Republic Bank versus Signature Bank. First Republic Bank was able to get $70 billion in terms of backstop from the Fed and JP Morgan, while Signature Bank was overrun by local regulators, right? So I think there is sort of potentially some political subtext at play here, stemming back to the January announcement about like, FDIC, OCC, and the Fed saying that banking crypto firms was especially risky and that, those banks should proceed at their own caution. So it does seem interesting, I think, especially with First Republic Bank versus Signature, which obviously Signature being the far more crypto-friendly bank there. The fact that they kind of went down their path while First Republic went down another, I think does sort of suggest that maybe there is something at play here in terms of how the government is viewing which banks should proceed and continue to operate and which ones should not. So I think that one is pretty interesting to look at specifically. And then there are these other crypto-friendly banks that are out there. There's a few left in the US, and I think people are really closely watching them today to see if they can withstand some of the strong headwinds that had, sunk, the three S's, right? Silvergate, Silicon Valley, and then Signature. So people are certainly watching to see if those other banks can hold strong. All right, who gets the last word on this? Wendy, I mean, Bitcoin is pumping. Is this a head fake? Is this real? Like, what does that part mean?
So people that I know in my community have no idea what's happening with the banks. Could care less. Everybody is so concerned with everything else. So I don't think that it's people that are brand new buying Bitcoin. It's just people that have already been in the industry that are buying Bitcoin, people from other countries, et cetera. And they're just trying to make money because, the regulators are stepping in and they might be shutting the fund down soon.